Hurrying to get to work in the morning, Katherine Thompson was walking through an underpass, which she already knew like the back of her hand. The woman wasn't feeling well that day, which couldn't but have an effect on her mood. Despite the fact that Katherine was already 5 months pregnant, few people knew about it. Since the woman had always been very slim, she wasn't really showing yet, which made it possible for her to continue to work. Katherine tried not to focus on the discomfort that her pregnancy was causing her and looked hopefully into her future, which seemed so distant and mysterious. The underpass had its own kind of atmosphere. It was always warm there during winter and cool during summer, which made it a perfect temporary shelter for all kinds of homeless people and beggars. In order to avoid having problems with the police, they behaved calmly and quietly and tried not to get into any confrontations with passers-by. Some of them were playing the guitar or singing songs, while others were simply sitting in the corner and looking hopefully at the people passing by. Working as a cleaning lady in the office of a trading company, Katherine took the same route to work and back home every day. The sight of the destitute and the poor always made the woman feel sorry for them, which was why she usually gave them money or brought them food from a nearby cafe. Unfortunately, Katherine didn't earn enough to be able to throw money around and do as much charity work as she would have liked. Nevertheless, the woman always tried to help the poor, especially the elderly and the disabled. The people experiencing homelessness always knew Katherine and always greeted her in the morning and wished her good night in the evening. Many of the young cleaner's acquaintances and colleagues considered her eccentric and said that she was living in a fantasy world that had nothing to do with reality. You have to understand, you need to think about yourself. Your fiancé left you and you have to pay rent, and you spend your money on some beggars. Katherine's neighbor tried to reason with her. At moments like these, the young woman simply fell silent and pursed her lips touchily, thereby ending the conversation. Her neighbor's name was Darcy, and she deliberately pressed on Katherine's sore spot in order to point out everything that was wrong in her life. But the woman didn't need anyone to remind her of that. She was well aware of all of it. Katherine spent most of her childhood in an orphanage because her mother was deprived of parental rights due to her alcohol abuse problems and inability to keep a permanent job. Growing up as an orphan wasn't easy, and Katherine knew it like no one else. By the time she came of age, the young woman was dead set on making it in this life. That is why Katherine worked very hard to get into college and was hoping to get an economics degree and start her own business. Everything was going well until her junior year when the young student met Jacob, whose father was a wealthy landowner and could light his cigarettes with $100 bills. The relationship between the naive young woman who grew up reading romance novels and the millionaire's son developed so quickly that they didn't even seem to realize when they became close, both mentally and physically. Dinners at expensive restaurants, walks under the moon, and nights full of love and passion succeeded each other in a seemingly never-ending string of new feelings and experiences. Unfortunately, the turning point in their relationship came very suddenly. It was painful and had an effect of a cold shower on both of them. Katherine's pregnancy was the very reason behind their breakup. This was partly due to the young man's reluctance to start a family, and partly due to the opinion of his parents, who considered marriage to an orphan woman to be reckless and even pointless. Justin repeatedly tried to hint that Katherine should get an abortion, but the young woman had long decided that she was going to have the baby. "I'm having this baby no matter what," Katherine said, knowing full well that she would have to quit college and postpone getting a degree for an indefinite period. In order to earn a living, Katherine got a job as a cleaner in the first firm she saw that had posted a job ad. Of course, the young woman wouldn't call it her dream job, but she knew that she had no other choice. And now, hurrying to get to work, Katherine greeted the people experiencing homelessness in the underpass, hinting that she had a little surprise for them in the evening. Glancing over the faces of the people experiencing homelessness, the young woman noticed a young man with crutches, whom she hadn't seen there before. The stranger was standing there with his head held low, hoping that the passers-by would give him some change. That's strange. He's so young and already disabled. And experiencing homelessness too, Katherine thought to herself. Since the woman simply didn't have time to figure out what was going on with the man, she wished everyone a good day and went to work. It was a regular day at the office, full of commotion, the noise of working printers, and the angry exclamations of the head of the sales department. Katherine always had a lot of work on busy days like that. Before Katherine got the job, there was an elderly cleaning lady working at the office, but she barely had enough strength and energy to wipe the floor in the lobby. But when Katherine got the job, the situation quickly changed for the better. Now the windows were always pristine, the floors were polished to a mere shine, and even the flower pots in the hall seemed to have been revived. The only thing that upset Katherine was the attitude she was getting from the head of the sales department. For some reason, the woman believed that Katherine was lazy and using her pregnancy as an excuse not to perform her duties. She often brought the young cleaning lady to tears with her sarcastic comments. She either didn't realize or didn't care that her attacks were hurting the young woman deeply. Fortunately, it was payday, which assuaged the anger of the quarrelsome boss who was happily calculating the percentage she got from sales. Having gotten her salary at the end of the day, Katherine went to the nearest store in order to implement her idea. Moving between the shelves of the pastry and dairy products, the young woman bought everything that could be useful to the homeless people living in the underpass. The cashier looked at Katherine with a smile. The young woman picked up her huge bag and headed for the exit. Meanwhile, the people experiencing homelessness were already waiting for Katherine in the underpass. It had long become a kind of ritual for them. It didn't mean that they expected Katherine to give them food or money every time she went home from work. The homeless people understood that the woman could only afford to treat them with something tasty on her payday, but they treated her with great affection and respect on other days too. Trying to make sure that she didn't miss anyone, Katherine gave food to everyone who needed it. She didn't forget about the young man with the crutches either. Having taken a piece of cherry pie, he quietly muttered, "Thank you," in response. Having found the right moment, Katherine quietly asked one of the local old-timers about the new man. Larry Miller was a respected man in the homeless community and knew a lot about virtually everyone living in the underpass. However, the old man didn't really have anything to tell about the new man, except that his name was Michael. "I don't know, he's kind of strange. He came by a couple of days ago, but he never told us anything about himself. He doesn't smoke and doesn't drink." Katherine raised an eyebrow in surprise. A man experiencing homelessness leading a healthy lifestyle. That really was strange. Having plucked up her courage, she approached Michael and handed him $50. "Please take it. I'm doing it from the bottom of my heart. You can pay me back when you can, and if you don't, it's okay too," the woman added with a smile. The young man's cheeks flushed with shame, but he took the money anyway. "Thank you, miss. God bless you," Michael whispered, putting the money in his pocket. Katherine smiled back at him, and having said goodbye to all the people experiencing homelessness, slowly headed home. The young woman hadn't felt so content in a very long time. She didn't know what it was exactly that made her feel this way, and frankly, she didn't really care. However, Katherine didn't walk for over 100 yards when she heard some strange screams coming from behind her. Having turned around, the young woman saw 3 strong men in jackets with hoods pulled down to their very eyes. The strangers surrounded Michael and apparently demanded that he hand them the $50 he got from Katherine. Despite the fact that his crutches seemed to be moving in different directions and the man could barely stand on his feet, he still wasn't about to give up without a fight. The rest of the people experiencing homelessness got scared and huddled by the wall, afraid to intervene and incur the wrath of the embittered youths. Realizing that Michael was about to get beaten, Katherine rushed to his aid without hesitation. At that moment, the woman didn't even think about the fact that she was pregnant and thus not only risking her own life, but also her unborn child. Clutching her purse in her hands, Katherine burst into the thick of the fight, swinging it in all directions like a weapon of sorts. The pregnant woman's intervention messed with the plans of the 3 thugs, who chose not to fight anymore and step aside. "What the hell? Forget it, we'll get even later," the leader said, spitting at his feet, and walked away. The two other thugs didn't hesitate long and obediently followed their leader. "Thank you again, miss. You must be my guardian angel," the young homeless man muttered quietly, smearing blood all over his injured face. "Stop it. Here, take a napkin. Don't you think it's time for you to get off the street?" Katherine said, helping the man clean up a bit. Before she left, she asked Larry Miller to keep an eye out on the limping young man. On her way home, all Katherine could think about was Michael and his eyes full of sadness. That night, the young woman didn't sleep well. After the day she had, the poor cleaning lady kept dreaming about crowds of people experiencing homelessness, youth gangs, and $50 bills floating in the air. The next morning, Katherine had a quick breakfast and headed off to work as usual. Going into the underpass, the young woman nearly bumped into Michael, who was holding a bouquet of roses in his hand. "Is this for me?" Katherine asked in disbelief. "Of course it's for you. Who else would it be for?" Michael smiled. The man had a clean shave that day and smelled of cologne, which pleasantly surprised Katherine. Moreover, Michael changed his clothes and looked nothing like a person experiencing homelessness. The only thing that spoiled the impression was his crutches, which reminded Katherine of the harsh reality in which Michael was just a man experiencing homelessness. Katherine accepted the flowers and thanked the man for being so nice and thoughtful before hurrying off to work. When the young cleaning lady came into the office with the bouquet of roses, the head of the sales department turned purple with anger and envy. But no matter how much Samantha Rogers tried to spoil Katherine's mood that day, she was unsuccessful. Michael's gift touched the very strings in the woman's soul that filled her tormented heart with warmth and tenderness. On her way home, Katherine already knew that the young man would be waiting for her in the underpass. Of course, the young cleaning lady was right. Fearing the revenge of the members of the youth gang, Michael didn't just meet her there, but also walked her home. Moreover, the man moved his crutches so quickly that the passers-by had an illusion that he wasn't injured at all. The young people decided to see each other again the next day, which gave them both hope for something more than just a friendship. They were both outcasts, a pregnant orphan cleaner and a lame homeless man who made his living by begging in the underpass. What could these two completely different people have in common? The answer was obvious: mutual feelings and respect for each other. The first date was followed by the second, and then the third. Passers-by turned around to look at this strange couple and watched them walk off with envy in their eyes. Love is beautiful in all of its manifestations, and the relationship between Katherine and Michael served as a clear confirmation of this fact. It went on like this for about 2 weeks, after which the young man suddenly disappeared. None of the other people experiencing homelessness knew anything about his whereabouts or what could have happened to him. Katherine had spent 2 long days full of worrying and tears before Michael finally reappeared. However, the most surprising part wasn't that Michael came back, but the way he looked. Michael was in great shape, and he was wearing a police uniform which fit him perfectly and went great with his strong face. He no longer had the crutches and the wig on his head. The officer was giving orders into his walkie-talkie. He was leading the operation to detain the members of the youth gang that was terrorizing the people experiencing homelessness who found shelter in the underpass. Seeing Michael in such an unexpected role, Katherine stepped closer and met his eyes. "Sorry, I should have told you earlier. I had to go undercover for this operation. We were trying to detain this gang for about a year, but there was never any hard evidence, so I decided to take the risk and go undercover, hence the crutches and the wig," the young officer explained. "Why did it have to be you?" Katherine asked in a trembling voice. Coming clean was very hard for Michael, who took Katherine by the hand, took her aside, and told her everything as it was. As it turned out, Michael Parker was recently divorced and was having a hard time getting over his wife, who'd left him for a rich man. Tired of feeling lonely and depressed, Michael decided to take part in an operation that could have cost him his life. "And what about me? Was I also part of your undercover operation?" Katherine asked with tears in her eyes. Michael froze for a second, but then he plucked up his courage and hugged the woman. "Of course not. I love you. Will you marry me?" the officer whispered in Katherine's ear. The woman raised her tear-stained face in surprise and realized that Michael wasn't kidding. "I will. I absolutely will." The other people experiencing homelessness were standing at some distance from them, but they still heard every word of that touching interaction. Just yesterday, Michael was a lame homeless man, and today he turned out to be an officer of the law who saved the poor from the attacks of a criminal gang that took their money. Looking at Michael and Katherine, the homeless people wished them a long and happy life together. People walked by the couple and couldn't help but smile, because they seemed to personify happiness and true love. A month later, Michael and Katherine got married, which was a completely natural continuation of their unusual relationship. Larry Miller took it upon himself to play the role of Katherine's father at the wedding. After the incident in the underpass, he decided to get off the streets and turned to a rehabilitation center for help. Looking at the newlyweds, the old man smiled meaningfully and said that he couldn't wait to see their children and that he was ready to give them all of his warmth and affection. There's no telling how the couple's life would have turned out, but we believe that cheerful children's laughter would soon be heard in the happy home